when I changed to another company, my nickname on that company was Growth Sparker, because I was just there trying to ignite people to think bigger, to look in a different ways. So it was an interesting conversation when we talked about growth, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's my nickname.
Happy Tuesday, listeners. Welcome to Epochal Growth with Sarah Caminiti. I am so excited for this episode. Do you know the feeling when you have really good chocolate and you don't want to eat it all? You want to save it for a special occasion because you don't want that chapter to be over. That's this episode. Ricardo Araújo is one of the most incredible human beings that I've met on this journey of mine these past few months. This is episode 10. This is my first double-digit episode. If I was talking to my son, I would be saying this is the 2 hands episode. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And I could not think of a better person to share this special episode with than Ricardo. Today's episode is titled The Growth Sparker, and you'll understand why. It's not as obvious as you think. Ricardo has an ability to guide others to understand the importance of being intentional and thoughtful and purposeful with your time and your space. I first had the chance to connect with Ricardo. I think it was about a month before we recorded this. This was recorded at the beginning of May. And it was at the very beginning of this public-facing journey that I've been on. And anytime I received a follower on LinkedIn, I would call my husband into the room. He would freak out a little bit. And one of those people was Ricardo. We didn't have any mutual friends or connections or whatever the heck it's called on LinkedIn. And I had no idea why he would want to click that button. So I reached out. I asked him if he'd be open to getting on a call. And we got on the call. And the first thing he said to me was, "So why are we on this call?" And I told him, "You followed me. And I wanted to know why." And he laughed and said that there was something that resonated with him. Couldn't even remember what it was. And so he just clicked the button. Not really giving it any thought. It wasn't any big, huge, magical explosion of clarity. But the clarity was there. We were supposed to meet. And that's why this connection, this human being in my life is so magical, because things really do happen for a reason. And I think that you'll hear this, listeners, while you are getting to know Ricardo, because he's changing the world. And I don't say that lightly. The impact that he's had on communities, on countries, on individuals, on prime ministers is not small. He is a gift. He is a gift to learn from and to spend time with. But one of the themes of the conversation is the simplicity of change and the impact that thoughtfulness and being intentional has on a person's ability to succeed, and the influence that we have in other people's lives, in their success, in their confidence, especially as a leader. But you don't have to be a leader. That's one of the really cool things about all of these incredible people that come on this show. You don't have to be a leader to drive change. You just have to be intentional. You just have to be someone that commits to being better and showing others that they too can be better. And you do that through your actions. Ricardo's intentions are clear. They're good. He's holding people accountable. He's asking questions. He's proving the value in thoughtful leadership. He is sparking growth within businesses, but also just to become a better person. He's creating programs that transform people's lives. And sometimes it's because he had a cheerleader, but sometimes it's because he was his own cheerleader. And we need to be excited to be our own cheerleaders. I mean, of course, we want to surround ourselves with others that lift us up and make us believe that we can do great things, because we are all capable of doing great things. But we also need to know deep down that we can do it too. I hope everybody's having a great day. If this is your first time joining, welcome to Epochal Growth. I'm so happy that you're here. If you're a return listener, I'm so happy that you're back. Make sure that you're following the new YouTube page. There's going to be a lot of clips from this conversation as well as from other conversations trickling in as I find time to upload them. We also have the podcast available on Apple and Spotify, and they'll notify you when new episodes come out. Sometimes there's going to be a couple in a week. Sometimes there's only going to be one in a week, but don't worry, it's going to be a magical one. One of the things that I love about these clips as I'm pulling them out is these little nuggets of wisdom are there if you need a reminder. If you need a cheerleader, go to YouTube. Go to the Epochal Growth page. We will cheer you on. We will remind you what's possible when you try. All right, you listened to me ramble long enough. Maybe you're listening to this as you're driving to a 4th of July celebration, or you've got a few days off and you're taking the long way home to just kind of decompress from all the craziness of your life. Who knows where this episode may find you, but you're going to be glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. This is Epochal Growth, episode 10, with Ricardo Araújo, the Growth Sparker. But I'm so happy that I get to see you again and connect with you, and everyone else will be able to learn from you as well, because you're pretty awesome.
Thank you. That's pretty way to start. You actually disarm myself for everything I have when you say that. Are you doing good?
I'm doing good. Yeah. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. I feel like things just change a mile an hour, but a mile a minute, or whatever it is that saying should be, but it's all for good things. And what about you?
Well, crazy times. Having 2 kids, 2 teenagers is always challenging. It's an interesting time because Q1 is gone. People are really focusing on delivering value to companies, right? So it sounds like everybody's stressing out. They want to have a calm summer. So now it's the time to deliver a lot in terms of work related, of course.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is, you've got Q1 where everyone's really ambitious, but you still have the rest of the year to figure it out. Then Q2 is like, no, we have to, it's the reality check of the situation. Yeah. And then Q3 is the summer, and you don't want to leave yourself with summer and then right before, the holiday final quarter to make it happen. So it's when it gits real.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and of course spring is here, so a lot of things is happening, right? And we tend to focus on work, but out there, life is happening, and that changed a lot. The way that people interact with others. The spring is blooming, so everybody's super excited to do and deliver stuff. So it's an interesting time for me.
Yeah, no, that's a really good perspective of it, though. It's I don't often think about the impact on the seasons changing and how everyone communicates and wants to spend their time and their energy levels and just general mood. It's leaving the winter, especially, I mean, in the Northeast of the US where I am and where I grew up, the winter is such a dark time, and it's such a long time, and to come out of that, it's like you can breathe again.
Yeah, end of January, beginning of Feb, it's usually like a very lower season from a motivation perspective. You came from an holiday season, right? Especially if you have snow, winter, and people tend to be more at home and not having good time with friends, at least in person. And now it's the time when everything's starting to happen. You're preparing the summer. So it's really interesting because you see those motions and you also see the impact that has on people while you're working. The motivation is completely different. Yeah. Here in Portugal, the summer is well, the first sunny days are starting to appear. You're starting to get warmer, so people are more excited to have social life outside doors. So it's really, really interesting to see the impact that it has on business. So it's not like I'm shutting down my business now. I'm going to enjoy the spring. No, you bring that energy to your daily tasks. So it's quite interesting. Actually, you know what? In here, what we're doing, especially in the rural places, if you translate May to Portuguese, it actually May is a bad thing, and the things now they are preparing to avoid all the bad things. Like May in Portuguese is Maio, the name of the month, and they're trying to avoid bad things because they want to have. Now it's the time that they start nurturing and flowering everything. So they want to make sure that they grow. The harvesting is going to be good by the end of the spring. So now it's the time to avoid bad things to happen to agriculture. And all these things are connected, despite the fact that we say it's not. Well, there is a connection between the mood, between the month that is coming there. So it was May 1st. It's a very relevant for a rural population. It's a very important because that's when you start seeing flowers and stuff like that.
Wow, that's a really good point because it is. It's the preparation period. It's like it's setting the tone for what could end up being a good or a bad year and the impact that has in those rural communities. Then also that translates perfectly into what the end of Q2 actually means for companies as well. I mean, it's a reality of the work that you've done over the start of the year to prepare you for this second half. It's all connected.
But it's quite interesting when you correlate things and you try to map out. So it's really seen from a business perspective. As I mentioned, Q1 is gone. It's when you have that mix of what's going to be this target and you're closing the accounting for previous year, trying to understand what was the margin that you have, what is going to be the target. The teams are like, are we doubling it this year, the targets? Is it going to be a crazy year or not? Q2 and Q3 are clearly go get results. So people are anxious to go out, get and hunt new customers, nurture existing customers, because that's when things are going to happen. Last quarter, it's always a mess, I would say. It's always a mess because you have a lot of holidays, especially November and December, right? And people tend to get some personal time off on those seasons. Although you try to get the results, what you have to do is Q2 and Q3. That's your main focus, and that's how you drive teams to success. It's ensuring that they'll have a great Q2, great Q3. People will get motivated to do things in October, beginning of November, and that's it. After that, it's really hard to make the year in the last month and a half. It's doable, but it's hard,
It would be a very stressful end of the year if you tried to squeeze it all in there. So make it count for 2 and 3.
And these cycles are really interesting when you give one step back and try to make it agnostic. Like, for example, the last 3 weeks of each quarter, if you work with sales teams or customer success, for back office teams, when they have the targets to meet quarterly, or teams like product management, community, that's when we usually call the end of quarter madness. It starts 3 weeks before. Everything is urgent. Everything is critical. From a back office perspective, you know that this is going to happen. So embrace the challenge and let's go. So it's really interesting when you analyze it in a step back position on, I've seen this. And so it's really cyclic, the things that we're doing. In the parallel time frame, it's cycling the seasons when they are happening. It has a huge impact on motivation, especially on motivation.
And
that's why I like to see it.
With what you do. No, but that ties into exactly like what your driver of understanding the why behind things. That's being able to take
Yeah.
that step back and look at it.
So when you really focus on managing a team, leading others, you need to understand what is the context where people are, what is the context that people are living right now. And if you work with multicultural teams, you need to be aware of Ramadan or Eastern or whatever. Or if you work with in a multiple time zones, you have to understand if the person is working in a different season than you are, because if it's in Australia, we are celebrating the summer and in Christmas, while in the northern hemisphere we were celebrating with snow and cold and stuff like that. Every time we're talking about EU, we're talking about with an European and a North American talking about the weather, but it has a different impact on the other side of the globe. And you have to understand that. Understanding the context is really critical. And I believe in our first conversation, we talked about it, which was the context is everything, where you're coming from, what's happening on the other side, what happens with that person itself. Is she having problems or not? And that's really, really critical for your success as a person that leads others and manages.
Completely.
So yeah, it's quite interesting. So it's not just one-to-one, and the world is not just black and white. There's a lot of gray areas there, and a multiple of colors. Yeah, a multiple of colors that we have to take a look of it. Yeah.
But you need to be aware of it. Like, you have to constantly remind yourself of this, especially when you're working with international teams. It's so easy to even if you are putting all of your energy into trying to be the best leader that you possibly can be, there's always something that you are forgetting or not realizing is happening. And that's why creating those foundations that allow for communication kind of takes some of the weight off of you if you've done your job well enough, because then your teams will come to you when they need to tell you something, or you'll be having a conversation and they'll talk about the weather. Yeah, you're in Argentina. You are in a separate seasonal cycle than I am, and no wonder you're in such a different kind of a funk, because it's dark and it's different there. And so it's a good reminder to always think about the need to constantly be talking and creating that safe space to prove why. And that's so that you can understand the context.
Yeah, creating that safe space is really important today, especially in a remote environment, right? Because it's easier. Usually, it's easier when you are sharing the same office. You share the same space. You initially can identify if the person with the body language, you can see, oh, today she's happy or she's not, or today there's something. Let me grab her coffee, take some water, and start a conversation, try to understand what it is, and try and see if I can help. That's something, it happens in the office. When you are in a remote work relation, it becomes harder to see the body language. Sometimes you don't even have the webcam turned on. That's the first signal. But it also can be like, I don't like to have my webcam always turned on and just disconnected. So you have to understand what is happening on the other side of the globe when you're working with time difference, with season difference and stuff like that. Understanding that in order to create that trust, how do you break the ice, right? In the relation, it's knowing what's going on the other side. It's really interesting. It's very also different from a culture perspective, because if you're working, it's very common, for example, for a North American to jump on a plane on a travel. It doesn't know the person, or she doesn't know the person on the other side, and starts talking about life. It doesn't happen in Europe, for example, not that easy, and especially doesn't happen in Asia. So it's really, really interesting to see how people react differently when you approach them, right? So knowing the context becomes easier to break that ice, to starting having a conversation. I have a funny story that I was traveling. I think it was from Atlanta to San Francisco. No, it was from Newark to San Francisco. Two gentlemen that stayed. They sit down in the back seat. They never met each other. They just start talking about the time that they served the US Army. And at the end of the travel, it's like 5 hours plane, 6 hours flight, I can't remember. They were already exchanging mobile numbers and getting a scheduling to have dinner at one of their places. And I was kind of like, what is happening here? This never would happen in Portugal or Europe or wherever, but it became so easy from a culture perspective. That was one of my first times in US, and I was kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? They just met like 5 hours ago in the same flight. Now they look like the best friends. And if you go to Asia, it's very hard to get that type of connection. At least in 5 hours, in a 5 hours time frame, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's very true. No, that's and I often forget about because I feel like the Asian addition into like the standard startup space of like the US startup culture and how that connected with the European startup culture. Asia has, at least in my experience, has been kind of an addition that's happened a little bit later. It's when we've really created that global focus of creating companies and expanding the reach and the opportunities in the remote space. And so I don't have as much experience working with folks that do live in Asia until recently. And you're totally right. It is a completely different cultural approach, and no one really thinks about that when they're bringing people into new teams or companies, to kind of set a reminder of just this is how things are here,
Yeah.
this is how things are here, this is how things are here, and all of that's great, none of that's bad. And how can we start talking about, how do you communicate? How do they communicate? How can we work as a unit here and not take anything personally, or not jump to quick assumptions?
Yeah, it's very hard in some scenarios. It's very hard the way that you do it. So sharing a little bit about the experience I have with working with people based out of Philippines or Vietnam. It's a very, I would say, hierarchy conversation, even in Japan, for example. So if you want to get the true feedback, if you want to get the, the issues that people are facing and the barriers that they are facing to deal with their job, it needs to be a one-on-one conversation. First, you need to get that trust and the safe environment, and it needs to be one-on-one. They will never ask you if the manager is there or if the boss is present. So you really need to, because if you ask, it's a culture where they're coming from. If you ask, you're a dump. So they have to avoid that in front of the manager, in front of someone that has a higher hierarchy than they have in the company. So what they do, even if, and by the way, I must say, do this disclaimer, I've seen managers in those countries promoting a different approach. Like, yes, do ask. Asking is good for you. It will help you to grow and things. When you ask, you evolve. I've seen managers doing that, but traditionally, going again to the context that we were speaking, that's where they're coming from. In Japan, it's even harder when you're talking, like if you're visiting one customer, and if you have like five levels of hierarchy present, they will always look at the highest one until the highest one responds. And when he answers back, everybody would not saying yes, agreeing with that. But if you go, for example, it's if you go for Middle East, it's even harder in some scenarios to get feedback because people simply are not used to create that trust environment. It's a very different relationship if you have women and men present. For example, you have to be more cautious in some of countries. I remember in Kuwait, we were rolling out one hospital management solution, and we had to be very cautious when we approached the keyboard and the mouse, if there was a lady present or not, because we want to respect at least like a meter and a half distance, ensuring that we would not touch her, or sometimes even looking in her eyes in a professional environment, to explain how the system works. So how do you create that? How do you build that trust? It's really, really hard in some real context, right? So that was happening in Kuwait. But again, as I said, in US, it's, for example, it's much easier. Even Europe, it's much easier to create that trust environment where you can understand what context brings. How did you grew up? How did you, Sarah, grew up? What was the context around in your school, in your work job, and stuff like that, so we can understand and create that trust environment. It's really interesting. For me, it's understanding people. It's key to success. It's really key to what we do and what we drive on the business side. Half of the time, more than half of the time, is dealing with communication issues, and the other half, or the other 40%, is really understanding what drives people, what motivates people to do, and what context did the person grow, so we can actually understand based on that how can we can deal and create that safe environment to work together. It's for me, it's a very interesting topic. Yeah,
that's what was one of the greatest things from our first conversation that I took away from your commitment to this, because through making this commitment that you have made to understanding not only like the context, but just like the person and what they're capable of, you're creating an environment, even if you're just planting the seed of creating this environment of, I want you to be successful because I believe in you. But if you're approaching it so thoughtfully as an individual who you have chosen to represent your company in whatever way, shape, or form it is, or you saw potential in them for whatever way, shape, or form it is, you have to continue that throughout. And that is a journey that you are on with them, and you invested in them and they invested in you because they're spending their time with you. And I love that you are taking this to companies for various purposes that bring you to that company, but you're proving the value of just this simple act of, no, each person here is able to shine if you give them the space to shine. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah, the space and the tools. Sometimes you have to identify, and by the tools I mean, well, you know what, you might need to improve your English in terms of vocabulary, or in terms of how you perform. Mine is not perfect. I've been working in trying to improve in the conversation, so I can actually express myself in English. I won't say as born in US or born in UK, but the point is, it might be a language. Sometimes it might be visual. You have to design diagrams differently so you can actually present and make better presentations to your customers. The point is, there's a multiple of tools. It's not just technology. It's also behaviors that you want to help others to succeed, right? And it's really important, because in the end of the day, you are what you build, and it's not about your account in the bank, in the money that you have, or the nice car that you drive, or big house that you have. Is how many how many followers do you have? And I'm not talking about Instagram. I'm talking about people that, if I open a job, if I have a job opening today, how many are willing to join you because they've worked with you in the past, and no matter what you need to be done, I'll join to work your team. And when you have a lot of people saying, what's your next move? I want to go with you. And then I think you are successful, because that's where people see the impact that you have, or people referencing you for other calls, you should meet Ricardo, you should meet Sarah, you should meet Antonio, because those guys are great. Sarah did a tremendous job with her team, motivating people. People were under stress and they overpassed that. So it's really important that you do that, because that's, for me, that's my measure. My measure for success is, okay, if I open up a company, let's pick on the IT world. That's what I've been working over the last 25 years. If I open up a company, an IT company, how many developers that I worked in the past will join me? How many tech leads? Is it going to be easier to get people from HR that worked in the past in previous companies to join my company? So I think that's an interesting exercise to do. And that's what you said, creating the safe zones, empowering other people to get them to a point where is really, really important and impactful, of course, right? When you create jobs and people come to thank you because now they have money to pay bills, that's when you cry. That's a different conversation.
Well, but it's not though. It's all tied together with creating an opportunity for yourself to have a purpose, but you're providing value in a way that you're still proud of it. Like, I would love if you're open to sharing what you have done within the unemployment situation that you came across. That is such an incredible thing that you've done.
So for me, it's a good story. Right? There's a lot of good memories that we have. Portugal was getting an unemployment rate. It was high at the moment. It was high at the moment, and we were trying to get more people. The company that I worked for at the time, we were trying to get more developers coming from the ecosystem. We saw that based out of Portugal, we could work easily for the Netherlands, for Belgium, for Sweden, even for the US, because they all had higher salary rates than we had back in Portugal. And it would be easy to hire Portuguese people and start working remotely due to the knowledge, the technical knowledge and the flexibility that people tend to have. So we were not finding developers at the pace that we wanted. And I came up with a proposal. I saw multiple coding schools on how to bring non-technical people to train them, teach them how to code, and then finding a job. So I was back in Lisbon having dinner with a friend. Actually, this was a session, I won't call it a mentor-mentee session, but we were having a conversation. And suddenly I was trying to share with her some knowledge, some experience I had as a technical leader. And I say, I realized the Prime Minister is there. The Portuguese Prime Minister is there. I should have talked to him and to open up the door to speak with the National Institute. And she was like, go there. I don't know. I'm not. So the mentor starts being the mentee. And she said, go there. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'm not going to what if. But this is not going to be a what if situation. So I went there. I asked him, sorry, can I interrupt you 30 seconds? I just need 30 seconds of your time. I explained what I wanted to. So this is for the US. This is like where I live. It's a flyover state. Nobody wants to live here. It was a huge unemployment rate at the time. So what we did was we actually, I got his number. He shared his number. He said, tomorrow, send me a text message. We'll get the interview or the meeting with the state secretary and things will happen. So the goal was to create a course to employ 20 people as an MVP of the program that we want to launch. Next day, how do you start the text message for the Prime Minister of your country? Nobody knows, right? It's really, how do you start? Oh, sorry. Sorry is not a good way to start. And I remember I did. 2 days later, I got a call from the state secretary. We got the meeting scheduling. What it was really interesting, like 7 days after this initial story, I got a message from the Prime Minister asking, is it scheduled already or do I need to do something? And I was kind of like, well, he's really interested in this to make it happen. So short story, what we did was we got 21 students. We started the class with 21. 2 gave up because they said, I really don't want to learn code. This is not for me, like a week down the line. And we got a job for the other 19. And today they still work as a software developers. And that kickstarted the conversations across national-wide. So we launched, I then was invited to participate in a national group to collaborate and design a program that would leverage the colleges, the Unemployment Institute, or in this case, the Employment Institute, the National Employment Institute. And we designed a program that until today, it provided more than 2,500 jobs, just nationwide. So it was really impactful because people still remember that first course. People still recognize the work that we did. And by the way, at the time, the company wanted to have the problem solved. They didn't know how to do it. Partially was like we trying to, let's do it without telling the CEO or whatever. It will happen anyway. But if the prime minister says it will happen, well, the CEO needs to it was really easy. And then we try to replicate this globally. It's quite interesting the impact that, and sometimes a follow-up story on this. We launched an education program. We provided free licenses so students in college could learn the technology, and then we would map with partners creating jobs across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Amsterdam. Yeah, one of our biggest events at the time, a user conference. We were in Amsterdam, and suddenly someone from Armenia, I don't even know where, I know it's over there from a world map perspective. It's like go east. And I was kind of like, someone from Armenia comes and says, we want to thank you. And we go like, why? Because since you launched the education program, we could pick up on kids with 18 years old. They didn't have money to go to college. They learned how to go. And then we start working remotely to Australia customer. And that means in a very local village, very poor village, they found a job at the age of 18 with technology. And thanks to your free licenses, we could, and it was kind of like, whoa, this is like the butterfly effect. You did something in Portugal and suddenly someone in Armenia is getting a job. So it's really interesting when I was not prepared to listen to that story when she came and there. She was the CEO of a professional services company, and she was sharing this story. We were crazy completely. What? Really, are we doing that? Yeah. Is it that having that impact? And that's when it's boom completely, because now we have to invest more in helping others, and now we have more. And from that moment onwards, even the CEO starts saying we need to invest more in social impact.
Oh my gosh.
So it's really impactful when you have this opportunity. Sometimes it happens, You can have one by one. I could never imagine that this would be like. And today it's a 700,000 community. Not all of them came through this education program, but a few thousand came, and that means a lot, right? That means a lot.
Oh my goodness. It goes to show, like, even this is the second time that I'm hearing it and it still gives me the chills because it's just such an incredible story, but it really goes to show what could happen if you try. What could happen if you think big and you think from an impact perspective, like those simple answers. Of course, why wouldn't we want to train people and get them jobs? Like, that makes total sense. And you don't usually follow through with it because you don't think that you maybe have the power. You don't think that you have the influence to do it. And when you just kind of push that piece aside and say, screw it, I'm just going to see what happens. The universe is telling me there is the prime minister at this space right here. And everything was pointing for you to go out of your comfort zone and just try, and it worked.
Yeah. So there's this quote from Bono. I think it's from Bono that used to pass in the radio. That's and he was saying sometimes at the age of 16 in your bedroom you think you can change the world. Guess what? You can. And that I'm not. I typically don't quote a lot of people, but that was one of the quotes that actually make me think. Looking back when I was 16, I want to change the world. I didn't know how to do it, right? And eventually, I ended up changing a bit. Even if it's one life, it's really important. And I think that was one of the points of our first conversation was precisely that one. Even if you can change only one life, then do it. Go for it. Just try to help, try to support, and see where it's coming from. It's really impactful. It's how you grow. So when I changed to another company, My nickname on that company was Growth Sparker because I was just there trying to ignite people to think bigger, to look in a different ways. So it was an interesting it was an interesting conversation when we had. We talked about growth, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's my nickname. That's my
I
nickname.
that's you. That's you. I mean, you and I know we're supposed to meet one another, and it's just like I love the purpose in life, making it possible to just try and make some change. And you see that in customer facing roles. Like if you try things out and you try to prove that impact that you have by listening a little harder to the customer, by giving them space, by asking those extra questions. But also, if you are a salesperson, asking those questions a little more too, and maybe feeling okay with saying, you know what, you're not the best fit for this company, but maybe you could try this one. Like asking those questions has
Yeah.
such an effect that carries of like just knowing that someone sees you for you, and then you give that back to people every time that happens.
It's really interesting. The other part that I really enjoyed to talk with you was about kindness. Right? You have a purpose, but you have a kindness on what you do. That is also important. If you see that you're in a bad context, that people are not willing to be kind with each other, it's not going to work. So you better pick up your stuff and move forward, because that is not going to happen. The purpose itself, and Sarah, but I'll try to explain. There's a lot of companies promoting saying they have a purpose. Well, I think that's not the purpose we're talking about here, right? We're talking about is putting a true change movement, a true growth movement, where we think about people, where we think about the individuals in a scalable way, or we try to do in a scalable way, but touch each other with kindness. And that's a completely different. It's natural. It's not something that you wrote down in a wall and says, now we have this purpose.
No.
That doesn't happen. And a lot of times, well, trying to find other new customers for my business, I'm always trying to see, oh, we have a purpose, or really, like, we try to understand what is that purpose. And then when you do the first interactions, you can see if the purpose is there or not, in the way they communicate, in the way that if they answer you or don't at all. And then when you see companies saying that, oh, employees are the, or people and our customers are the center of our universe. And then you reach out, but you don't get an answer. You reach out for a different channel, and you don't get an answer. Well, you see that purpose, that's greenwashing what you're doing in terms of and purpose tends to lose the notion and the real purpose of the word, tends to lose it when you see a lot of companies promoting what they don't have. And what I think, what I really enjoy when talking with you was really about the kindness that you talk with the others, how do you treat them, how you want to ensure that you treat right the person, regardless the job role that they have in the company. So let me share another story. And it's not promoting myself. It's really promoting the story because it was really, really interesting. I work for a customer, and every day, in that time, we were still working on site. And I went to that office every day for 3 years. And every day I would pick the free newspaper during my meeting and would deliver them to the security guard at the reception, because I knew that he could do the crosswords and all the games that he would have in the newspaper free of charge during the day. And I did this for 3 years. And every time he would call me a different name, like, good morning, Zé. And I'll say, should I tell you I'm not Zé? Maybe not. Every day. You know what? I knew that was my last day. And in that morning, he asked me, well, I always call you Zé. And he didn't know that I would be leaving. And he asked me, I always called you Zé. Are you really Zé? And I said, yes, I am, of course. I don't even thought twice. I'm not going to say. 3 years down the road, he would always say, thank you, Mr. Zé. Thank you, Mr. Zé, for the news. And I said, should I say that I'm Ricardo and not Zé? No, I'm not going, because he was so thankful every time he was trying to do this. And my colleagues asked me when we were at lunch, why didn't you just say, come on, never mind. He was, every time he said thank you, it came from his heart. He was so thankful for what the gesture I was doing. For me, it was nothing, just picking up free newspaper and leave it there. But it's really how you treat people with kindness that then it will revert back to you in some way that you will see. And I know that that's when I found, that's when I changed for a previous company, and that was a dream job for me. So I want to think that that's what happens. It reverts back to me with a great job opportunity.
I think it does. I really do think it does. It is something that is so transformative of just seeing what happens when the simplest thing, you grabbing that free paper and bringing it to that gentleman, was something that changed his day. He felt seen, I'm sure. He
Yeah.
had something to do. He had someone that acknowledged him and he looked forward to seeing you. Like all of those small little things for such a simple gesture
Yeah.
that you provided, it makes you think how you spend your days and the kind of way that you're presenting yourself. It's what's the purpose that you say that you have, and then how do you actually drive that on a daily
Yeah.
basis? And it all is the story that you're telling about who you are. And when you have kids, how are you showing your children how they need to exist in this world? And it's too easy and too rewarding to not want to do it. And I mean, even for selfish reasons, it's the feeling that I get when I just hold the door open for a mom that's got a bunch of kids with her, because I know
Yeah.
that feeling so much. It fills
A
me
lot
up.
of times, yeah. A lot of times, the small gesture that you do, that just open up the door, grab something something just left over, and it's really small gestures that help you. It tells a lot about you, right? That doesn't come on LinkedIn profile. That tells you when you are interviewing someone, the respect that it's interesting, the respect that people they have for you in a regular situation, someone that comes outside and see that respect happening naturally, that tells a lot about you, how you treat others. And doing this transition to the business world, it tells you precisely the same.
Yep.
If you go to if you're visiting a new customer or a prospect and you're trying to get that deal done, from the receptionist until the CEO, if you treat everybody in the same way, with kindness, with respect, in a respectful way, you never know who is the person that is sitting on the next side of you, and you're doing it in a selfish way. I'm not going to hide you, because you're treating others, people, in expecting that others will treat you in the same way. That's for sure. And also, I would be running out of, that's not the term. I would be scared to know that the CEO is just right beside me and I'm treating others bad.
Yeah.
And I want to have these guys, the deal done with these guys. How come, right?
Yeah.
Or treating someone like someone that you cross by in the hall badly and violently, in a violent way. Sometimes it's words, sometimes it could be whatever. What your body language, you really have to understand what you're doing, because others are seeing it, and that will play a role in you. There's an interesting, when I was leading customer success teams a few years ago, I was seen in a conference, and I think I shared this story with you, which was the Zendesk CEO, and he was telling, you're not the center of the universe. You have to understand the context
That
of the
stuck
other.
with me so much.
And we were kind of like, how come you're not the center? And he said, look, others have their life too. They have to pick up, even if they are CEO and if they manage like a $13 billion company, whatever, they have to pick up kids from school. They have a supermarket shopping list to do. They have to do the dinner. The dog might be sick. So there's a lot of what happens to you, it also happens to them. So you really have to understand that you're working with people, doing business with people, and they have the same context that you are. Sometimes you are up, everything is going great. Others, you don't. and you're low, and you have to manage that energy. It's really understand, and the others have to do this. So you have to look at the other side. It's quite interesting when you do that and you try to transition that to a customer success team where the customer is really the focus. And sometimes you have that, you create that relation, that trustful relation with your customer, and you go to product management trying to get that feedback that you got. It's not that good from a company perspective, but you have to deliver it to the product management. You're not going to do it violently if you want to have the support from product management, even if the customer is right. Then you have to handle it carefully. How are you going to say it? How are you going to share it? How are you going to bring other? You want to have the product manager as your admin inside the company. So you also have to understand this notion on what's going on with she, for example. And then it is really, really important that you do this. Kindness. So we talk about today about kindness, talking about context, talking about treating others. And it sounds like a more motivational conversation, but a lot of these, we've even talked about the weather, but a lot of these has an immediate impact in what you do and how you speak. Before I joined our conversation, I actually changed the music, so it becomes a much more higher motivation. And I was listening to Given to Fly from Pearl Jam, so I can actually just the word fly, it opens up your horizons on what you speak and how you speak. It's really important that you prepare yourself to the challenge that you're going to have. So it's really kind from you to have this conversation, by the way, because I was not expecting to speak about me or some of my stories that I shared with you previously, but it becomes very easy because I feel that we are in a trust environment to have this conversation.
Same. I was so honored when you said that you would do this. And of course, I want to give you the space to share because I have been so impacted by our conversation that we had. And it reminds me that this feeling that I've always had of wanting to be better and wanting to allow others to feel the way that I always hope that I feel when I interact with others is it proves when I meet people like you, like this, the power behind it, the movement behind it, the impact for change, and the missed opportunity to not think about it, and having conversations like this and speaking to people that are as successful as you are and still make it a point to talk about it. Like, it's not something that you need to pretend that everybody understands and you hope for the best. No, you need to say it out loud and acknowledge it and give it that fuel to drive that change. And it's really special when I get to talk to folks like you.
Sarah, currently I'm working with a more junior team, specific engagement manager. Always trying, when you are in the professional services organizations, there's always these type of relations like, oh, the customer doesn't know what she wants or what he wants or whatever. And there's always this conflict on, well, they asked one thing last week, 2 days they change it, now 3 days down the line they change it again. They don't know what, and people feel frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And my conversation especially with those junior engagement managers, is always like the same. You have to understand what's going on the other side. The person has been working over the last 15 years in an Excel file, and now you're trying her to work with an iPhone or with an iMac, and the technology transition, it's not easy to do. You have to understand what are the behaviors, what is the technology, how advanced he or she is, and you have to understand also the context, because she has work to do. She has 5 hours to deliver that report. It can't be 6, it needs to be 5. At 5 p.m. she has to go.
Yep.
So you really need to facilitate the life of the user. You have to understand pain points, what is critical, what's not. The user is saying that the user needs like 55 attributes in a screen. Nobody reads 55 attributes in a screen. It only needs like 5. The user only needs 5. Those are 5 critical. You have to understand why Does it need that information? How it's going to, what is the solution? What is the answer that the user is trying to find on the other side of the screen? And understanding that, it will become easier in your life. And instead of having 4 iterations on what wants or not, you can change it and try to find it the first time or second time. There's a parallel on what you do on a regular basis. There's a parallel in everybody's job when dealing, especially dealing with customers. It's tough, It's tough dealing with people on the other side. It becomes easier when you try to understand what's going on the other side. That's it.
Completely. Well, and it's the intention too. That's one of the things that I realized once I started building teams, what an opportunity to promote intentional communication, where you prove that you value the person on the other side. You want to make it clear that you are here to understand them specifically and how you can guide them so that they don't come back and ask the same question 3 times. But if they have a question down the road, they know that they can come to you and get that response that's necessary. But if you don't allow, as a leader, a space for your team to take that time, you're preventing, customer advocacy. You're preventing complete adoption of the product. You're creating more frustrations. You're demoralizing the folks that are trying to get through this so that they can do their job, because you're not listening to them and asking those questions to really understand how you can best help them.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that we've been talking about, and we've met a couple of times. But it's very interesting that when the motivation is there, when the drivers are there, it becomes very easy to talk about them. That's curious, You can use that also during the interviews. When you are interviewing, you can also do some questions, and try to understand what motivates others, and if they have the right skills for the team or not. And if you're looking skills like, do they really concern about people? Do they really concern about the others? Or are they a go-getter or not? Allow me to share just one story that I did also in an interviews. So as I share, I live in the center, I have one of the places I live, it is in the center of Portugal. And the point is, for a Portuguese, everything that it's more than driving, for the Portuguese mindset, is too far. I'm not going there, okay? And I'm like 2 hours from the capital. And the point, everybody I would start talking about reaching out on LinkedIn. This sounds like a good profile, hey, blah, blah, blah. And people say, look, why don't we meet tomorrow? And I said, well, that's fine. If you want to come here, yeah, I'll join you. Okay. But really, I realized people were not understanding that I was leaving 2 hours driving from there. And I was kind of like, okay, so here's my place. And I would send a Google Maps. And people say, you were 2 hours driving. And I say, yeah, but you said you would come here, right? Well, it's a little bit far. That's fine. Let's have the remote interview and we'll talk about it. And it was not a disqualifier. But then there was this point in time I get, yeah, that's no problem. I'll go and meet you tomorrow at 3. I'll be there. And that's it. And for the first moment, that was Joanna. And for me, she was a getter. And I immediately realized that she wanted that job. She understood that I was not in Lisbon, but that was not a problem. I'm going to reach you where you are. If you can't come here, I'll go there. I'll talk to you. I'll get the interview, and eventually I'll get the job. So you can try out people to see. We talk about how you treat others. You talk about if they are getters or not. You can do a lot of these activities during the interviewing process. That people are facing challenges I was looking for a getter, so she was the one to get the job done. That was it. I'll go get. I don't care. I said, look, but I'm 2 hours driving. I don't care. I'll go there. I'll meet you, and that's it. While others would stay. For that job, they were not the right person. And eventually, I got hired a few of them for different positions. But this is just to illustrate how can you actually do on a business side, look for different skills in different situations. It's really, really interesting. And she came and we had a great interview. She's still working 8 years. 10 years down the line, she's still working in the same company, Eugene Pack. Yeah, it's cool. It was cool. Portugal is a very small country, so it becomes 2 hours driving. You are in the center of Portugal. That's not a big deal, and it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But the way that I'll meet you. Okay, come.
Well, and that also is a little bit of a confidence shower too. I'm confident enough that this is the space I want to be in. This is the environment that I want to work in, and that my skills match it enough that I'm going to be 4 hours in the car to commit to proving to you that I am this person that's the best fit for the role. Yeah. And that says a lot.
This week we had a similar story. So I was going to introduce for one of my customers a colleague for me from the college time, and I said, "Why don't you come to have a coffee with the manager that is hiring?" And he said, "Look, but I live like 50 miles from there. Look, I live 200. Do you want to compare, or do you want to have a coffee?" He said, "You made your point. Let's have the coffee." And and you went there. The conversation went great. Let's see the next steps. But it's the point. And again, he was confident that he wanted to understand if that was a good company to work or not. He was confident enough to go and meet the person. Sometimes you just have to do that push. And so the confidence, it would be an hour of conversation just with stories about providing others enough confidence or the support to their personal confidence to meet success and meet goals.
And I probably am going to bump this conversation too.
That's fine. That's totally fine. But I think a lot of times that's what you do. You're providing context, providing the tools, and lastly, you're doing the final push for confidence on the others to take that step. The same way that Christiana did to me when I was trying to, should I go talk with Prime Minister or not? It said, go. And that was the final enforcement I needed to go there and do the stories. It was cool.
It's very cool. And everybody needs a cheerleader. I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't be a good thing to support somebody. People deserve to be supported. So why not? And I'm
over
glad
that side of the ocean, you use cheerleader. Here we use the word supporters, but the goal is the same. It's someone that is really there for you and supporting you,
empowering you, and really reminding you, because your head tells you sometimes different stories than what the reality is, and to have someone kind of snap you back in and say, no, remember who you are, is always necessary.
It's really, really cool. Sarah, what's next?
What's next? So we are going to go over our time if we don't close this up soon. Something I realized, I never even let you introduce yourself. So would you like to just give a brief?
Very brief?
Yeah, just give a little intro for yourself.
Well, it's not about. I think the conversation that we had introduced a lot about myself, that I wouldn't speak about it. I'm Ricardo. If you want to pronounce my last name correctly, is Araújo, which is very hard for a lot of people in the world.
Hold on, Araújo? Did I say
Araújo.
Right?
Beautiful. Yeah, you're almost there. For your second time, you're very good.
Thank you.
And well, I'm married with a great wife, very supportive for this. It could only be possible, this journey, with her support, because a lot of times I was traveling and she was the one still having a career and evolving in her career and supporting the child. We have 2 teenagers, and I like to do a lot of things like mountain biking, road cycling, sports fishing. What else? I hunt mushrooms, wild mushrooms. I like to cook. I like wine. And on my spare time, I'm the president of the board for the volunteer firefighters at the local village. That represents a lot. Yeah, that represents a lot to me, because there's a youth community impact with the job that these female and male firefighters do, women and men do on every day. And I'm really proud of them. And that's it. That's who I am.
Yes, that's it. That's no big deal. Just
just a regular person as you.
can't do an
And if
extraordinary.
you allow me, a big kiss for my kids, because they know they challenge me a lot to be a much better person than I thought I was going to be.
I love that. You're a good dad. They're lucky to have you. So we do end the calls usually with one question. And so I like to ask folks on the podcast right now, what is the era that you are currently in, or what is the era that you are seeing yourself moving into, just off the top of your head?
Changing organizations, I won't say with kindness, because that's not would be the regular word I use, but changing and being impactful on everything that you do. It becomes, for me, that's my next move, which is you take a lot of jobs because you need to pay the bills, and you need to change. And I'm being very selective on what I'm doing right now and the jobs that I'm taking, regardless if it's a small project or a bigger one. I really want to have impact on people's life, and it's not just about having numbers. Regardless if it's a $9 billion company or if it's a 1 cent company, it's really like where my mind is right now, is really changing people's life. And how can we do that through business? Sometimes you change creating jobs, sometimes you change creating some technical solution or digital solution that will help others people's life in a much better way to perform their job, their lives. And that's where my mind is right now. That's my change on what I've been doing over the last, say, 22 years. And over the last 3, when I decided to move to a more consultant role, was more than being the consultant. It's going to select the projects that I work on a daily basis, be impactful. And being impactful is changing people's lives. For me, it's not just about making money, a great company. That happens in the way. And I must say that happens in the way, but it's really changing people's life to a much better one. That's what I do. That's what I want to do.
Well, you are doing it. And I am so excited to hear more stories as your career evolves in the space of the transformations that you've seen in the places that you have been able to leave your mark. And I'm sure there are tons that are going to be coming your way over time, because it is that ripple effect. It's just like you were saying earlier. You make that impact, and people want to work with you and work for you. They talk about it and they see opportunities, and then they connect others that could also enjoy your benefits as well. And they'll be lucky to have you.
Thank you for your words. They really mean a lot to me, because it has been very nice to talk about this. As I said, you don't put this on LinkedIn, but it's great to have the opportunity to share a bit about what we do and how we think on a daily basis. And you provided the right, let's say, show to do it, and in a very trustable space. So thank you for challenging me to share this.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad that this hour is over, but I know that it's also late where you are. Thank you very much for your time, Ricardo, truly. I'm so honored, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Talk to you soon. Yeah.
Have a good night.
You too. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See, what did I tell you? Isn't he absolutely incredible? Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Thank you for introducing me into your space, and thank you for being open to change. You've just finished Epochal Growth, Episode 10, Growth Sparker with Ricardo Araújo. So make sure that you're following on Apple or Spotify podcast to be notified as soon as a new episode is out. Please subscribe to our YouTube page so you can find nuggets of wisdom from past episodes, current episodes, anytime you want, anytime you don't have over an hour to hang with me, or if you ever just need a reminder that you can do great things. I'm your host, Sarah Caminiti. This is Epochal Growth. I'm so glad you're here.